name is Rudy Lozano Jr. I was born and raised in the little village. I have been involved in the community since I was born. My parents were very active politically and were involved in community organizing struggles since they were teenagers in high school. I have run for office twice. Didn't win, but that's okay. And I've worked in Little Village, Pilsen, for several community-based organizations and have been an active member of our community for a very long time. The similarities between North and South Lawndale is they're both very working-class communities. They're neighbors, and so they share a lot of the same streets and local geography. Even the business communities are shared. I would also say that the issues that we both face as communities of color, the lack of equity and the lack of resources and access to resources are similar between North and South Lawndale.
Hi, my name is Lawndale Muston, and I'm a resident of North Lawndale. I've been here 46 years here, and I was a founding member of the 22nd Ward IPO, which included Rudy Lozano Sr., Chuy Garcia, Evelyn Garcia, my wife Queenie Muston, and a host of others that were part of the political organization that helped bring independence to our area. Well, the major similarities is that we both lacked services in the past, and it was the unity of North Lawndale and South Lawndale that made it possible for the Latino community to become much more independent today than it ever was. Starting back in, say, 1981 with the Harold Washington for mayor movement and Rudy Lozano for alderman, and I was the chairman of Rudy Lozano's campaign for alderman that helped change the area so that our services got better. In terms of services, I mean like garbage collection, tree trimming, sidewalk fixing, and things like that. So the similarities is that we both need government to function for all of us.
Mi nombre es Manuelita C. García y vivo aquí en la villita ya desde 1969.
Andrea Guzman, also Little Village resident since I was born, so I'm 36 years old. I do work at nonprofit with families, black and brown families, all across the city of Chicago. Solo di eso. Las diferencias entre las comunidades. Sí.
Bueno, las diferencias es que ellos se apartan porque piensan que nosotros los latinos no queremos tener nada que ver con ellos, pero en mi persona, por ejemplo, en el gimnasio, pues la mayoría son morenas, señoras ya mayor, y nos llevamos muy bien, hacemos una amistad, hemos estado reunidos en comidas, en eventos que se han hecho ahí. Para mí son humanos y son hermanos porque todos somos hijos de Dios.
So for me, the differences between North Lawndale and South Lawndale, oh God, it just phases. The differences, obviously, cultural, traditional, racial, obviously. There's different strife. There's definitely struggles. They just look different. Otherwise, I think we're both attacked by the same systems. We're both seen as less than, regardless what side of the viaduct we live on.
South Lawndale is predominantly Latino, predominantly Mexican. North Lawndale has been primarily African American, although it is rapidly changing now. This area down what we call North Lawndale, in this area especially between Ogden and Cermak Road, is rapidly changing to heavily Latino as well. there are at least 4 or 5 families on my block, 5 or 6 families on each block in the area. So the change is diminishing.
Hi, my name is Bobby Price. I am a barber and the owner of Principal Barber's Barbershop in North Lawndale community, where I was born and raised. What would get in the way of the unity between North and South Lawndale is ignorance, by far. The ideas we have and the way we protect ourselves from truths, the ignorance level that some can have definitely get in the way. It causes cognitive dissonance, and it will lead to misinformation and foolishness.
So my name is Tiffany Childress Price. I am a resident of Greater Lawndale. For the 22 years that I've lived here, I've always been on the border of between Little Village and North Lawndale, and identify with both of those communities. I consider both of these places home. I am a Chicago public school teacher, which I love. What introduced me to that career was organizing, being a community organizer, working in education and youth job development, arts corridors. And I am the mother to Solomon and Elias, and married to Bobby Price, who owns Principal Barbers on Ogden Avenue. And I think when we focus on the margins, the marginality of our differences, right? Because there are differences. Most brown people in Little Village, mostly Mexican, but other Latinx folks, came through immigration, right? Not necessarily that was always a choice, right? Because we know that some people have come here because of the ripple effects of international policies decisions that force people out of their homes. But still, it's a choice, right? You come as a unit, whereas Black people, we don't have that history of where we come from. We were forced here through capture and enslavement, and so just those histories alone, like our coming to Chicago stories, coming to the United States stories, and then how we've come to Chicago are different, and it's easy to focus on those differences. And when we focus on those differences and have a hyper identification with our group, it's easy not to look for ways to ally with others, right? Like, so when we have only an inward lens, right? When we're only looking at, well, what about Black people? What about brown people, right? So when we look at our situation and don't see a similar or same identified struggle, we will compete for resources. Those differences can make us feel like we are more dissimilar than similar sometimes.
The belief that we are different and that we're in competition with one another for jobs, for resources, and what that is, what I would say that is white supremacy has taught us to not like each other and to think that people of color are criminals, that they're lazy, and that they don't belong here. And so I would say if we believe in those ideas of white supremacy, that will keep the unity from North and South Lawndale.
Well, a couple of things. One is what I would call narrow nationalism. That is, those people primarily in the Latino community who see the movement as only advancing the Mexican community, and then some in the Black community too, but primarily those forces that think that without unity they can still advance themselves, first of all, over that, as well as lingering thoughts of racism, that because of the history of slavery in our country, unfortunately, in my opinion, most groups in our country look at African Americans as less than, because of the history of slavery and the disconnect between the countries in Africa and Black community here, as opposed to Latin America. There's people still have connections, because they still have people who still come in all the time from Central America and Latin America and Mexico here, so they still keep those connections. And then those forces those political forces that don't want unity between black and brown so that they can stay in power.
How I felt about what happened with the anti-black gang violence was I was deeply hurt. You know.
During those days, especially the first 2 days, my emotions were quite high. Definitely some anxiety there and a lot of sadness. It was just sad for me to see some of the videos where, you know, I heard brown youth saying certain things. And then working with the police that are always, not always, but most of the time, they're persecuting them too, right? They've got their eye on them, they're harassing them. I don't understand how you could all of a sudden forget who your abuser is and then now you're going to work with somebody. I don't get it. I don't get it.
The Latin Kings or 2-6 or whoever they were also then extended that to people who wasn't involved in the looting at all, who began to harass women and children and others that had absolutely nothing to do with it because their racism.
I think also on a larger scale, when you look at the bigger picture, just what everyone was going through, the tension of, you know, the pandemic, not being able to work, and folks are hungry. And so, you know, you go to your lowest self during times like that. And I think that was a big opportunity for everyone to show that. And at the same time, what I loved about the reaction was just like the unity side and the, you know, the side of especially, you know, Little Village and Pilsen and the Latino side of how they came out and stepped up was unbelievable. Like that showed true to actually how those communities think overall.
Not to allow the actions of a few of our neighbors make us abandon our commitment to hope for unity. You know, people were really hurt. People were physically harmed. It was physical violence that people will need to heal from for a long time. I do want to magnify that we came out like in hundreds, you know, hundreds and thousands of folks came out to say, you know, we reject this kind of violence, we reject this kind of division, this ethnic division, this racial division, and we're neighbors, and we're going to keep working and growing together.
And we have to hold that space for our youth to have a safe space to dialogue, to really figure out who they are, where they're coming from, so that they know how they can identify themselves, whether it's in comparison to others or just who they are in themselves versus what society, versus what the block, versus what their families are saying about who they are.
But do I want it to be one Lawndale? I would say I would love for us to operate as one Lawndale, like politically, because again, we have the same struggles. We're both communities that are over-policed and under-resourced.
Well, let me put it this way. I think cultural differences is still important as well. I think we should have unity. I mean, we should stay united in terms of our overall goals. But the cultural heritage of Mexico still should be prominent. The cultural heritage of the African American community still should be prominent as well, but in a way that includes everyone.
I think it was a good idea because it was a better relation.
But to her point, I think once you become one, then that definitely helps with the relationship building. I just wonder how that would be accepted. I think many times people get comfortable living in their silos, right? Like they live in their own community, but then there's no room for more. So, and that's the part that we're trying to dismantle.
I'm here today to stand firm in Black and Latinx solidarity. I'm asking that my Latin King brothers and my Little Village brothers and my Vice Lord brothers from the Lawndale come to peace and understanding like they've done in the past when racial tension were high.
But we're also similar in grit and we're similar in resiliency. We're similar in that we all have the desire to want more, to do more, to be with family, around family, and to celebrate family. I don't think that's different really for anyone. But that's also why we've become so resilient, is because we have our communities and because we have our families that keep pushing us forward.
Ancestors watching, I know they're watching. Ancestors watching, I know. Ancestors watching, I know they're watching. Ancestors watching, I know. Ancestors watching, I know they're watching. Ancestors watching, I know.